comms and marketing. Essentially, we want to help you make data-driven decisions, and that's essentially for you to prove impact, but mostly to improve the value of impact as well. Despite working across multiple industries, regions, agencies, brands, we actually find that the challenges we see are the same everywhere. We say it all the time, but the media landscape is fragmenting faster, trust is hard to build and easy to lose, and it's getting more and more difficult to measure real impact despite the fact that we have so much data. So these events are really about helping you understand this. We host these events to help you cut through that noise and see what your peers and what everybody's talking about in terms of understanding what's actually driving influence. One of the things that we have focused on today, of course, is about brand. And the reason that we've done that is we released a report and we surveyed over 300 global practitioners throughout last year. And what we found from that is that brand building emerged as the #1 priority for all of them. Half of the PR and comms pros that we spoke to found proving ROI beyond validatory metrics is the challenge, and 50% of agency marketers worry about algorithms impacting visibility. What this means is simple but profound. Creativity alone won't carry us anymore. The ability to prove business value is becoming the currency of credibility. And this is really the underlying tension of everything we're going to discuss today. And Onclusive have been spending the last few years really trying to navigate this space and build to answer these various needs. Off the back of our report, we've recently just launched our brand influence report. It's a global ranking of the 50 most influential brands in the media. And what we found from that particular report is that volume alone does not determine impact. Influential brands are separated by metrics like sentiment quality, CEO visibility, professional engagement, and their prominence in AI-generated conversations. The brands that lead this ranking do not leave their narrative to chance. They monitor across channels, they measure how their media activity shapes perception, and they stay ahead of emerging risks before they escalate. In terms of methodology, we putting that report together, we came up with a ranking. We created a global media influence score based off a mainstream media score and a social media score. So for each, we consolidated brand signals, including the number of mentions, reach, sentiment of these mentions collected, and this is all over the time period of 12 months. And we use this to understand the story of the brands reflected in the media and compare their impact. How do we get this data? Well, that's what Onclusive do. We capture the world's media. We capture over 28 million pieces of earned media content every day. We're looking over 3 million sources across print, online, and broadcast. And last year alone, we collected over 11 million hours of broadcast content globally. Our social listening picks up signals from over 25 social networks, catching billions of pieces of audience and stakeholder intelligence every year. You will see a link to the report, but a few highlights from it. The #1 brand, the video champion, dominates across all platforms, of course YouTube. Highest social media performance while maintaining a top-tier media coverage. It was a combination that allows it to pull ahead of all the other brands. In social media, YouTube dominates a volume of mentions. Its LinkedIn reach reflects broad B2B visibility and high engagement from users, creators, advertisers, and marketing professionals across all other social platforms. When it came to mainstream media, high volume of mentions, 75%, mostly positive, viewed brand from the top 10, and it's routinely cited as a news source. So, in summary, the key findings of that report was really around influence no longer being driven by isolated signals. It's a combination that matters. The most influential brands are those that maintain narrative consistency across channels, and visibility alone does not influence. It is about sentiment, interpretation, that's all decisive in shaping influence. And then finally, of course, AI and GEO are reshaping how stories are formed and discovered. As part of that report, we were looking at direct competitors present in our brand influence rank, and we ran a comparative analysis on their AI visibility to better understand how LLMs are impacting their share of voice. And we did this using our GEO analytics platform, which we've been developing over the last few months. And moving forward, GEO analytics will basically allow you to be able to indicate which channels to act on to shift the narrative and increase the impact. I've said the magical words GEO, which usually means a gentleman called Daryl and Anna will magically appear. But it's a nice segue onto the next keynote. So it's all about brand today, and one of the key points that we want to talk about is really, from our GEO experts, to navigate how GEO can impact brand and reputation. So if I can call up Anna and Daryl. I'll also put a link up to the brand influencer report that we did. Of course, you can download that as well.
Thank you very much, Sindhu. Right, let's see. Great. Okay, so I think you've had an introduction of Onclusive already. I'm Anna Salter. I'm SVP of Data and Insights at Onclusive, and I will allow Daryl to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Daryl Sperry. I'm MD and co-founder of performance-driven marketing communications agency Hard Numbers.
That's all we're going to get. No, it's not. Here's more.
Well, thank you. I mean, just to say that Hard Numbers is an agency built on measurement. Onclusive were one of the first businesses that we engaged as a partner at the business, and our whole model is that we drive growth for our clients and that we prove it through best-in-class measurement and analytics of the efficacy and impact of what we do, and we've got a few AMEC Gold Awards to prove that. So what is GEO? It's kind of a sign of the times, but depending on who you might listen to, it's either a load of snake oil being sold by people that are just trying to sell you prompt monitoring systems, or it's the biggest, single most disruptive force in marketing and communications since the Enigma machine. The truth is, the answer is probably somewhere between the two. But what we mean when we talk about GEO is generative engine optimization. I've also heard it called AEO, answer engine optimization, LEO, all sorts. But basically, it's the art and science of optimizing your on-site content and how you appear off-site in terms of earned media, editorial media, and other third-party content, so that you that your reputation is managed when people ask questions about your product, your service, your category, your brand on generative engines like ChatGPT, Perplexity, Claude, Gemini, and the others that people use. Why do it? Here's some stats that hopefully help make the business case for doing this. So in 2025 alone, global downloads of AI applications reached 3.8 billion. It was, I think, 1.46 billion the year before, so you can see a huge increase in growth in downloads of AI applications. If you look at the number of folks who...
Some of it's in French, so that's going to test you. Sorry about that, didn't spot that.
Oui. That's okay. So that is basically, there's nearly 1 trillion searches annually are conducted on ChatGPT. So it's about, depends on who you listen to, what numbers you look at, but it's about 912 billion searches conducted on ChatGPT annually right now. 89% of users use B2B users use ChatGPT or other LLMs when making a purchasing decision. That's according to Forrester's annual B2B buyers survey in 2024. I think that number's only going to increase between that research being done and now. And then finally, the killer stat is that according to data from SEMrush, the average user converts 4.4x, so 4.4 times more effectively from traffic that's referred via generative AI platforms than traffic that's referred from traditional search. So what that says is that the traffic that's referred to your site from large language models, from generative AI platforms, is much more valuable in terms of the propensity to convert. So it's really, really worth investing time and effort in thinking about this. I managed to get through that despite my GCSE French not being that back in October, November of about 2024, Hard Numbers did our first research report into GEO, before it was even called GEO, and we looked at the world's 100 biggest brands and 4 pillars of reputation: quality, trust, innovation, and I'm blanking on the phone. Quality, trust, innovation, quality, trust. I say this so often. Value for money. Thank you. Quality, trust, innovation, value for money. And what we found, for each company we asked 4 questions, which are basically picking an example at random. Microsoft, is Microsoft a trustworthy company? Does Microsoft offer value for money? Is Microsoft innovative? Etc., etc. So for each of those 4 pillars of brand reputation, for each of the 100 biggest brands in the world, we asked those questions of ChatGPT, and then we analysed the results. And what we found is that 61% of all of the responses about the reputation of the world's 100 biggest brands cited earned media, editorial media. So what that says is earned media is incredibly influential, is the single most influential source of how LLMs talk about, answer questions about the 100 biggest brands in the world. So reputation is shaped by editorial media primarily.
And am I right in saying that editorial in this context included all earned media, including social?
No, social was separate. We looked at social separately, but editorial media was basically all earned media supported by advertising.
Cool, thank you. Right, so I'm going to pick up the second phase of this piece of research. So Onclusive and Hard Numbers partnered on this second wave, where we wanted to test this hypothesis that we found that editorial is obviously a major driver, as is social media, in helping people form their opinions as a result of what's being, helping the AI form the opinions and then they pass on to the people asking them the questions. So, testing that, we wanted to put GEO answers, AI answers, side by side with what was actually being talked about in earned media. So this was really to test how earned media drives category recommendations, how it drives head-to-head comparisons, and how it drives answers in procurement scenarios. So some of the main ways that people are putting questions to these engines. So the scope of the study was we included 134 brands, and we made sure we designed the prompts in such a way to align with how people ask questions. So we weren't asking leading questions, we were asking about, say, for example, Accenture. You wouldn't just say, tell me about the best professional services company. You might also ask about management consultancy, etc. So we gave 2 bites of the cherry, essentially, to how we were tracking by category. We looked at earned media across the board, so online news and social media, and we looked at 3 LLMs to get a good spread of how they behaved, because you're probably aware that all of the LLMs play it slightly differently. They've got different media diets, they've got different balances of, owned versus earned versus Reddit versus other things. So we wanted to get a good spread of how that worked. So we first of all analysed the earned media, so that's obviously my specialism, so that was the easy bit, I think. And we looked at all of these brands, we looked at how they stacked up in terms of sentiment, how they stacked up in terms of reach, and also accumulated it for volume as well. So that gave every brand a global influence score. We then developed a way of scoring the AI outputs and answers. So first of all, we looked at which were the best brands and sub-brands in each category, and all of them scored between 0 and 30 based on how they ranked within each of those 3 LLMs. We then looked at that procurement scenario piece where we looked at how severe were any drawbacks being cited by the AI. Were there any red flags? Were there any concerns being cited? And that gave us a concern score, where the higher the concern score, the more red flags were being raised. So the headline really is, we found that there was a strong correlation with various different quality and reach factors. So the first one is, we found that the higher the reach, it expands the likelihood of recommendation. So basically, you've got to be in it to win it in this game. We also found that the higher the media influence, you were more likely to be in those top recommendations. And again, if you were in the top 10 for earned media, sentiment and reach, you were much more likely to rank highly and come top in LLMs. Positive sentiment also matters. Again, there was a strong correlation between sentiment and recommendation. We found, interestingly, given that stat that so many procurement people are using LLMs to guide their decision making, we found that if you scored well for positive sentiment in earned media, you're almost twice as likely to allay concerns that procurement people might have presented to them when they ask these questions of AI. And we also found out that the brands which were most positive were 3 times more likely to beat the competition in head-to-head battles in these recommendations. So really, in terms of boosting your AI visibility, it's a good idea to measure the outputs and do it regularly. Don't just go for big tentpole moments and dips to look at how you're doing. Slow and steady wins the race. Track your volume, reach and sentiment accurately and consistently, and also track how your brand is ranking in LLMs over time. Consistency is key, so making sure that you've got good message hygiene, if you like. Make sure that all of your on-site and off-site earned media activity is pulling in the right direction, that you've got very consistent ways of talking about your brand across the board, and you can deep dive into the reasons that LLMs are making recommendations, and I'll come on to that in a sec. And our findings are that things like third-party advocacy, winning awards, getting your spokespeople out there, anything you can do to boost the credibility of your messaging takes the risk away for the AI engine when they're thinking about whether to recommend your brand or not. So all of those third-party endorsements come in very handy when it comes to trying to boost your profile in AI. But it doesn't happen overnight. It's definitely a strong and steady, consistent way of working in your editorial, which should move the needle in your LLM outcomes. And then we wanted to talk about some very practical things. So there's some things you can do to start measuring your LLMs. One of these is to make friends with the people in digital marketing in your organisation. And so start by analysing the referral traffic in Google Analytics. You can analyse the pages which are driving that, which are seeing the most referral traffic, and you can see where they come from. There on the left, you've got the LLM source. And you can also cross-reference these pages against keyword ranking positions to understand how people are searching for you, what are the kind of topics and keywords which are driving search to your brand. And we thought we'd give you something very useful. Start measuring.
Just jot this down.
Just start scribbling, please. I'll only give you a couple of minutes. No, we won't. So we said, oh no, hang on, sorry. It's all on the same page. There is a QR code. So this is essentially the code that you need to be able to build a filter in GA4 to be able to build that custom group of LLMs to be able to track your referral traffic. So.
Cool, thank you. And then how to build a prompt library. So when we start working with clients on GEO, the first thing we do is build a library of up to about 100 prompts that are both branded and generic about about the business, its products, its services, its category, etc. And those prompts we will put into a range of different LLMs like ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, etc. You know, and the prompts should all contain two key components that determine how AI models respond, right? And that's based on intent. So the first key part of that, the ask. What is the best? How do I, you know, compare, etc., etc. So when users are expressing an intent to potentially select a new provider of a service or something like that. And then the second part is context. So the specifics. So both the audience, like the ideal customer profile, and then any limitations like size of my team, my budget, size of the organisation I work for, etc., etc. So those two considerations, intent and context, help you formulate a prompt library. If you go on to the next slide, if we break that down further, there's different sources of information that you can get to help you formulate those prompts. So the first part is for intent, Google Search Console, or other tools that basically help you find what topics are people searching for that they're then coming to our website most frequently. And so that can then help you find the nomenclature that you can use to describe your products or services, categories, etc. In the vernacular of your prospective customers. And then secondly, using Google Analytics, as Anna was saying, to find the pages that are seeing the most AI referral traffic. So then from that you can sort of reverse engineer what are the topics that people are most frequently searching for in relation to your brand, your business, your organisation, etc. To give you an example of that, we recently did an analysis of the traffic from generative engines to a large financial services business, and we found that when we categorised the type of page that they were coming to, the majority, like the single biggest driver of traffic, was anything to do with jobs. Like the graduate recruitment page, like individual job roles, everything like that. We grouped all of that stuff together and saw that that was the single biggest driver of traffic, more than corporate news or content about the ESG policies, stuff like that, right? So when you look at you can get a lot of analysis about the intent of the user using tools like Google Search Console, Analytics, etc. And then for context, there's additional sources of information you can use. So first, like, typically your sales enablement content, right? So thinking about who is your target customer? Who is the audience or audiences that you're trying to reach, and building that into the prompts that you write. And then thinking about the competitors that you want to benchmark yourself against or compare yourself against. And then finally thinking about your USPs, or why someone would ultimately select you as their partner for whatever product, service, or whatever you provide. And then finally thinking about other sources of contextual information. So answer the public. People also ask, you know, when you go to the top of Google and you type in, you get the kind of auto-suggest at the end for what people are typing in relation to your brand or product or service. All of those are useful tools to then get you that contextual information about what people are searching for in relation to your brand's products or service. Go on to the next slide. So then to take all of that data and to build prompts that most accurately reflect how people are searching for you using Gen AI platforms, you can then take the who from that data, so the ideal customer profile, the target audiences you're looking to communicate with, the what in terms of how they're describing your products, your services, your category, etc. The why in terms of the criteria. They're like, why might they select you? Or what is their buying criteria? What's their reason for selecting you or a competitor? And then finally, categorise those into which. So you have branded prompts that mention your brand, and you have generic prompts that don't mention your brand at all, that just generically talk about the product, service or category in which you operate. So to give you a real world example of kind of putting this into effect, our members had a client called Onclusive, which is a cloud-based global card issuing and payment system. They have a service called bin sponsorship. It's very sexy, very interesting stuff. But basically, if you issue, like Trading 212 as a business, for example, can issue credit cards to their customers. That card is issued by another company. And the bin is the long number across the middle bank identification number. And so that service is called bin sponsorship. Okay? So bin sponsorship for a company like Untitled is a very high intent search that only prospective customers of Untitled would really know what it is and really be searching for. And historically, they've ranked at position 1 on page 1 of Google for that term and other variants of that term, which got nearly 1,000 searches a month in the UK. They then saw that they were falling in terms of traditional search, and they weren't getting anywhere near the volume of traffic that they historically got from AI search. So they asked us to kind of help them address that and help them both address how they appeared in traditional search and AI search as a result. If you go to the next slide. So what we did is build a prompt library for them of all the searches that are both branded, contained Untitled, and non-branded, just talked about bin sponsorship. To basically give us in as natural language as possible the kind of prompts that people would be using to find their service, and then we analysed the results from those prompts to see what were the sources being cited, what were the types of content both on-site and off-site that were being cited, etc. That then helped us inform both what on-site content we might need to create for Untitled to fill gaps in relation to bin sponsorship with content they didn't have on the site, and also do some good old-fashioned PR and go and get the media coverage about the bin sponsorship service that they provide through bylines, comment opportunities, stuff like that. And what all of that did, ultimately, was help them regain position 1 on traditional search for bin sponsorship as a term. It also helped them become as this screenshot from the ChatGPT demonstrates, the top cited brand in AI recommendations for bin sponsorship. They saw a 3-fold increase in the traffic that they got from AI platforms over the period of time we were doing this work for them. Through the prompt monitoring that we were doing, that we helped improve their average recommendation position, basically, within when people were asking prompts in relation to either bin sponsorship or the brand. So, what you can do to boost your visibility in AI search platforms. Firstly, optimise for both credibility and distribution. With traditional, it makes me feel a bit sick when I say traditional search engine optimization, because it doesn't really feel that old to me. But in a traditional SEO world, you would basically, with link building, optimize for a small number of high domain authority sites that you were going to go and secure coverage in. What we've seen through the research that we've done with Onclusive and through the work that we do with our clients is it's a much broader range of sources that get cited by LLMs in relation to products, services, categories, etc. We have a client that we only ask 5 prompts a month about, and at the end of that month, on average, 500 different editorial media sources are cited in relation to that one client and those 5 prompts. So what that speaks to is a much broader range of sources are cited, editorial sources are cited by ChatGPT and other Gen AI platforms when they're answering users' questions. So optimise for both credibility and distribution. Secondly, focus on the sources that are used by Gen AI. Again, it seems really simple, but using the tools that are coming from Onclusive in terms of prompt monitoring or other tools that are available to track where you're appearing in relation to these prompts, then understand what are the sources that are most frequently cited, and are there any sources on that list that you haven't outreached to previously? Can you inform your PR outreach strategy from the gap analysis that you do effectively there? Place the right kinds of content in the right kind of places. We're all professional communicators, hopefully that kind of makes sense to everyone. And then think about the semantic relevance of topics. I always like saying semantic relevance because it makes me sound clever. But basically, generative AI platforms, particularly Perplexity, seem to have quite a nuanced understanding of the semantic relevance of sources to the topic question that they're being asked. So to give you for instance, if you ask Perplexity about what is the best laptop or what is the best mobile phone or what is the best flat screen TV, it will more frequently than not give you sources like Engadget and things like that are specialist kind of technical, consumer electronicsy kind of titles, and it won't just continually cite Forbes, which you can see with other AI platforms. For example, then thinking about your own site, on-site, structure on-site content, particularly thinking about things like schema markup and things like that. Make the most of your press releases. Make sure that there is a dedicated section on your website for your press releases. Make sure that each press release has its own dedicated URL with a date time stamp and that URL doesn't change. And potentially distribute via Newswire as well to maximise reach and the opportunity to be picked up by AI platforms. Maximise the impact of internal content by taking FAQ content and publishing it on your site. So think about any internal documentation that answers users' questions and think about how you might publish that as FAQ content on your site, either in a dedicated FAQ content hub or as FAQ, like frequently answered questions on dedicated product landing pages on your site. And then finally, bit geeky, but make sure your robots.txt file doesn't block AI crawlers, and there is an emerging standard called LLMs.txt. Think about adding an LLMs.txt file to your website to help AI crawlers find their way around your site.
Thank you very much. I think we're all quite relieved that a bit of good old-fashioned PR doesn't go amiss either. So just to wrap up, for overall, we talked about how visibility and sentiment drive LLM recommendations. Quality content goes a long way to improving your chances, but it's worth getting into the technology, whether it's Google Analytics or some of these other tools that we've been mentioning, to be able to learn how to optimise what works for your brand, both on-site and off, and then take it to the next level. Now, we've got some time for some questions. We also have a report which goes into more detail on that, all of that research, so we'd be very happy for you to download that. But we have a question, lady in the front.
Hi, Cindy. I wanted to go back to what you said about the editorial sources.
Mm-hmm.
So I am the editor of a business newspaper here in the UK, but our USP is that we're print only. We don't publish any of our articles online. Do you think this is something that I should be doing to become more discoverable, or would that only benefit the people that we're writing the articles for, because then they're the ones that are getting cited?
Do you want me to give you?
Yeah, it's a good question. You go.
Yeah, okay. I'll take a first pass at that question. This is a really tricky one, and I talk about this quite a lot because I have a worry about the media industry that lots of PR folks get really, really excited about GEO, but they don't think about the downstream consequences of, for example, ZDNet has seen a 70% fall in its traffic because LLMs don't pass as much traffic to sites, to media sites or other sites, as traditional search. And even with traditional search and Google search, AI mode and AI overviews is taking a lot of clicks away from publishers. So this is a difficult balance to strike. Some publishers are blocking content from AI engines spidering their content. Other publishers are leaning into it. You'll probably know there are publishers like the FT and a number of Vox titles and things like that who have, and Axel Springer, who've licensed their content to AI platforms. There are other news sites that have blocked these engines completely. There's a site called Fairly Trained, I think it's fairlytrained.org, that provides a lot of research into like where models are finding answers to questions and what the relationships are between these different models. I hate to give you a consultant's answer to a question, but I'm going to give you it, right? It depends. And it depends on what is the outcome you're optimizing for. If the outcome you're optimizing for is distribution and maximizing reach, then I would think about making that content available online and making it obviously available to all the different things that might spider or search or whatever your content. If your model is more based on like subscription revenue or monetizing that content in some way or another, I would think about how you might keep that content behind the paywall and try and do some kind of reciprocal deal. Maybe there's a way that other publishers could club together to collectively sell their content in a content licensing deal to some of these big organizations, because they have done content deals with big copyright holders like the FT, Axel Springer, etc., etc.
Listen, I think what we've established is the rules of media and marketing have changed, right? And everything you thought you knew about your audience has changed, certainly in the last 5 years. The train they get to work, the people who influence them, the crises evolving, the tweets or the Trump socials that are happening every single day. And I think what we've seen, particularly in that last discussion, is the conversion of social and earned media is more prominent than ever, right? We have had two very smart people who work far more in the data side of things talk about their experience of how media, marketing, advertising, communications is driving our activity. Now, I'm very much the personality hire. I'm far less qualified to talk about that stuff. What we're going to talk about is our experience. I also come from a marketing background. Our experience in terms of what we're doing to move the needle, right? So I'm thrilled to be joined by some very talented people indeed. And Will is also here. We've got, we'll start on the end with Amy. Amy's going to take us, I think, particularly through a comms lens. It says on my notes that Amy is a chartered PR professional with over a decade of experience, which I do not believe, in both agency and in-house roles, and has now built the sort of PR comms function from the ground up at Fix My Car. We then move on to Jo, an award-winning speaker, brand builder and creative marketer. Jo spent a lot of time in her career at two really impressive brands, both Gymshark and Lounge, where, like, genuinely, I think she created some amazing campaigns and some phenomenal results. She now has a 100,000 strong audience. Not all of them can be here today, so you lot will be light work for her. Will is my friend. I wasn't just being mean to him then. He comes, I think, what's going to be interesting here is from both a marketing and a media lens, right? Got a background in particularly sports marketing strategies for brands like The Sun and Talk Sport under News UK, where I think you now head up marketing and the broadcasting sort of marketing team at the moment. And then last but by no means least, Vicky McNamara, VP of Marketing at Workday. Something I really appreciate about Vicky is her sort of commercial mindset when it comes to delivering measurable impact from marketing. I think that's something you're going to take away today. Got about 30 minutes. You seem like you've got loads of questions, which is great, definitely not annoying at all. So we're going to try and crack on and leave time for questions. That's that done. Okay, so what we're talking about today is the authority matrix. So we're going to cover B2B, B2C, and the creator economy. Like I said, everything is converged into one, no clear lines anymore. We're all in the ship together. So what I want to start with is really around that idea of B2B, B2C, and the creator economy. And I think that's hopefully going to lead us down an interesting path. It's no longer clear to me who holds the power in a marketing office, right? If you're in an agency, if you're sitting in a little marketing section of an office somewhere in the city, you know, once upon a time it was very clear it was comms, once upon a time it was really clear it was brand, once upon a time it was really clear it's performance marketing. Will, I don't know if you've got anywhere that you want to kick us off with that?
Yeah, thank you for slagging me off straight away. Yeah, look, I love, I suppose, this topic really, because I suppose what News UK does, you know, we obviously own The Sun, The Times, and our news broadcasting brands, so TalkSport, Virgin Radio and Talk, but TalkSport keeps me out of trouble most of the time, and it's kind of at the centre of what we do. We want to be a platform for lively debate and opinion, and I kind of see that as kind of twofold really. That's delivered by our talent, really, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that with the creator economy a little bit later on, but it's like TalkSport's been on a massive evolution over the last sort of 10-15 years. Like when you think about how we've evolved digitally, we've evolved into this digital monster, really. And I kind of always think about it from a marketing perspective, how we're always punching above our weight, I suppose. Like, and it's like, take for example, we just had Cheltenham obviously last month, so we created an old school Alan Brazil kind of game. Alan Brazil's our breakfast show host. He's had the most ridiculous excuses under the sun for how he hasn't made the 5th day of Cheltenham. He's playing dodgy prawns, he's playing his knee, or he couldn't get out of his Airbnb, obviously he was stuck in the champagne tent. But so how do we punch above our weight and lean into that? Is we create this old school arcade style game that people can play. It's got sort of to do with marketing, but it's just like how we promote our Cheltenham coverage, and that's kind of what we're doing inside out. And when we go back to that, how TalkSport have evolved massively, those conversations are now happening kind of all over the place really, and I suppose as marketeers we've kind of got to make that kind of a two-way conversation, so we'll see that more in our products moving forward and around personalisation and data and whatnot, but I think it's just a really interesting time to be in this space at the moment.
Well, it's interesting, you went straight for creativity, right? Finding something that's, quite mundane, someone missing the first day of Cheltenham, and turning it into something creative. Vicky, I think, as we can relate together from a B2B perspective, often it can be really annoying sitting in a room with creative people. Right?
I do feel a bit out of my depth.
Well, tell me then, is creativity relevant for those? Is there anyone in B2B in the audience? Great, yeah, okay. So for those people with their hands up, is it relevant?
Very much so, and I think your question about who holds the authority, and I don't think anyone does at the moment, because I think everything has to ladder to the overall purpose of the business. That I'm from field, so I'm going to say that. So I align the head of the UK, we hold a number, marketing is there to grow the business. So it's creativity, it's more content, to be honest, than the creativity, but for me, it's how do I pull all those threads together, all those I need to make them into steel threads as well, from brand to demand to grow the business. So creativity is important because you want to stand out, you need to inspire, we need to engage. That maybe get somebody for the first few seconds, but then you need to bring your authority in, you need to bring your credibility in, you need to bring your content, and then what? I think with my hat on, and what I do as heading up the UK, is I always ask everybody, and there's probably about 25 channels I have to pull together. What next is what I always ask, and why is a lot of my questions as well. So I don't answer your question, but creativity is really important, and I'm challenging it all the time, but it's one part of a bigger puzzle.
Yeah, no, you're right, and I think, once upon a time that tofu, mofu, bofu was far more linear, and that's maybe not the case anymore. you said something there, marketing is there to grow the business, and I think there are lots of comms people in the room, and the role of comms, certainly for a long time, was to protect and enhance brand. Again, I think those things have converged. I think those lines are a bit more blurred now. Amy, you said something, we did do prep for this, believe it or not. Amy, you said something interesting, which was around, it's not, the answer isn't always buy something, right? And I think that's where the role of comms is particularly interesting.
Yeah, thank you for remembering that I said something interesting as well, because I completely forgot. We've taken a look at how our content is landing. At Fix My Car, we serve both B2B and B2C audiences. Both of those need different strategies and different approaches. And we noticed that our driver content was landing really well, but we weren't seeing the same engagement with garages, who are our B2B audience, and taking a real big step back from what we were doing and having a look at it, quite frankly. And I just sort of noticed, I was like, this reads like an advert, and I don't want to buy it. It's not interesting. They don't care about it. We're just ramming our product down their throats. No wonder they're not engaging with this. What do they actually need? What do they actually want? What are their problems? And what can we offer them as a trusted source in this space to make our brand trusted, to make our brand look as authoritative as we believe that it is? And so a big 180 on our content. We stopped selling, we stopped pushing, having a tagline right at the end, like, don't forget to click and fixmycar.com. All of that went out the window. We stopped doing all of that, and we just focused on providing them with information that they needed to help their businesses grow, to help them attract more customers, because they're having the same problems that we are. They have the same struggles that we have, and we just weren't addressing those needs with our content. We were too busy trying to sell to them. And the second we stopped doing all of that, we were getting a lot more engagement, a lot more clicks. We had a lot more engagement on our social media with the content, which was not part of the plan, but an unexpected bonus, where we had garages coming to us and asking questions, which was ultimately exactly what we wanted, but really we were so far away from that. It had been beyond the realms of what we thought was possible, but really concentrating on what our audience needed and wanted to hear from a trusted source of information and giving them that. Sounds quite simple, but believe me, it was shocking as an idea when we pitched it, but it made a huge difference, and now we are seeing that engagement with our core audience really grow.
I've been scribbling, there's so much to unpack there. I think a few things jump out to me. The first is, and Darren actually almost sort of referred to this in answer to a question, is starting with your objectives in mind, and that doesn't always mean the short of marketing, of sort of that performance-based stuff, but also the long, which, as we know, takes longer to do. It's more expensive, but pays off far more for far longer. And I think there are many brands, certainly in the B2B space, that are waking up to that. And the other piece is that brands have really woken up to the fact that brand itself has to have a seat at the table, whether it's because of AI slop, as you sort of alluded to, or AI engines, as Darren and Anna spoke about. I think we're seeing that a lot in the FMCG space, whether that is, I don't know, brands like Lounge or Gymshark, or now Cheerlux or Muse. I think we're seeing a lot in the FMCG sort of retail space, Joe, and I think a lot of that links to authenticity. I think that was the word of the year last year, probably, authenticity. Yeah, authenticity, trust, and a lot of that comes from humanity, right, and humanness.
Yeah.
How do you think, Joe, brands are doing that, particularly those founder-led brands?
Oh yeah, I mean, the world's got a trust issue right now, hasn't it? We don't trust politicians, we don't trust corporations and logos, we don't trust each other, and it is a little bit of a problem if you're trying to run a business. But this isn't anything new necessarily, it's just that the stages of marketing have changed over time. So previously, we worked in a world where we could broadcast information and just give it to consumers. Then we moved through to search, where we use keywords, and we as a brand get to decide those keywords and what happens with them. Then we moved through to social media, and what happened there is we started to leave the monologue and enter a dialogue, which is essentially where your consumers and your audience are as important as your brand. They can take your marketing and put a complete spin on the story if they want to. I don't know if any of you have launched a campaign and then let it drift out into the world and you stalk the comment sections, or even look at other brand campaigns and you stalk the comment sections and you're like, oh no, that's probably not what they intended to happen. Sydney Sweeney rings a bell for me. That was a whole Jaguar, that was a whole thing. So I think authenticity was a huge buzzword because what people are trying to do is to be real in a world that needs real. However, the word authenticity itself has now become unreal and we're looking for other tangible ways to build realness. It's not rocket science. Humans trust humans, but only if they get to invest in the story of the human, which is why content marketing works so well, because it is not an overnight thing. You get to digest content over time, and you as the audience and the consumer get to decide, do I like this person or do I not? And you get to decide that. So you get to invest or not invest, and that is completely your choice. But given the choice, that feels like a worthwhile investment, whereas broadcast and reinforced information no longer works necessarily. But actually, the bigger brands, what they're doing is both. They broadcast at the top level and they infiltrate with the content marketing to build and nurture over time. So that's why founder-led brands like your Gymsharks, your Lounge, they boomed during COVID because what's everybody doing? They're sat on their phone, absorbing content, learning about the story, invested in the story. So yeah, I think founder-led brands, provided the story is genuine, interesting, and delivered over time, work really well.
It's funny you say about the scrolling. My team talk to people about their social strategies. Literally speak to hundreds of people every week, right? So, oh yeah, we're doing social listening. Great, what channels are you listening to? Oh, Facebook and Twitter? What the fuck? Who's scrolling through Facebook and Twitter now? So I think, a quick aside, right? If you think you're doing social listening, quick action, tomorrow when you get back, whether it's you who does it or someone in your team, ask them, does our social listening vendor monitor TikTok and LinkedIn if you're B2B or TikTok if you're B2C? Thanks, Joe. I think that links me to something I wanted to ask Will. I think, Will, as a media, almost a media owner, right, you have, with great power comes great responsibility, right? And I think I'd be keen to understand your experience in sort of provoking conversation, understanding your audience, understanding what works, and going to them with that.
Yeah, sure. So I suppose it links back to the first question you asked, really, and the first answer, really, in terms of talent is kind of at the heart of what we do. When we talk about, I suppose, creators, if you like, it's slightly different for us because in this sense, we kind of talk about talent in our building at News UK, and that's across our brands. But certainly if you take TalkSport as a brand, is a perfect example. You've got kind of the two types of talent where you have our core radio presenters, and it's wrong to call us a radio brand anymore, as I said, but actually because that lives very digitally now, and actually, as I said, that transcends into these conversations that are happening kind of elsewhere. But then we have our digital first talent as well, who mainly live on YouTube, and where we try and dive into specific topics. Obviously, around YouTube, it's around sort of, I suppose, depth, not breadth, and so we launched a lot of club channels and club YouTube shows, and we get experts in the digital space to try and help own that conversation. And like I said in the first answer, we try and make that a two-way conversation as much as possible there, really. So I'm kind of always encouraging my team, again, spinning back to the marketing perspective, because the worlds are merged so much, really, is like how are we using our talent and our presenters to really grow the brand. But it's kind of always got to be with a purpose for me. Like, we work really hand in hand with our social team, which again we might talk about a bit more, is how are we making sure that they are working with those talent on a day-to-day basis to grow our brand messages and laddering up to what we're trying to do as a brand.
Yeah, great. And I think an interesting thing when you look at TalkSport or some of the other brands under News UK is that when you find what works, you sweat it, right? And someone in this room who used to work in my team, I used to say sweat it. When you find something that works, redistribute it, repackage it, sweat it. All you need to do is take Christmas eggs, right? I think some of us have spoken about this. The ones that work are the Coca-Colas that have been going for 25 years, right? Why? Because there's an authenticity to it, there's a humanness to it, there's something recognisable, nostalgic, and I think nostalgia is something that you're doing quite well at News UK as well. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, it is, and I suppose definitely from a Virgin Radio side of things. Actually, we've got Chris Evans is our breakfast show presenter on Virgin Radio, and we're kind of bringing back that sort of TFI Friday, kind of looking at the age group of the room, but like very much bringing back that TFI Friday feels about the place. We've redesigned a whole new set in the Virgin Radio studio. More to come on that front. Watch this space. For a give away too many secrets. But like, it's just really leaning into that and again, it's dialing up the fun, dialing up the tone, dialing up the sort of bonkersness of what we can do to really, again, like you say, leaning into that nostalgia and trying to make people connect with our brands and our people, I suppose.
And Vicky, I'm going to merge two questions that I've written down on my little piece of paper. I think, from a B2B perspective, that all of this stuff is changing the dynamic within marketing teams between performance and brand. I don't know whether it's a friction or whether it's an opportunity, but I think certainly it's fair to say that brand has become more measurable, and therefore maybe there's a pressure or an expectation there. Have you had that experience?
Oh, definitely. So I don't know how many people know Workday, but one of our main brand campaigns is Rockstars of Business. We sunsetted that a few weeks ago. You probably wouldn't know that, but we did. That was a really bold move, and there has been lots of friction. So it used to be that the brand would just run, to be honest. Run with this fantastic concept, and Rockstars was a fantastic concept. But we weren't seeing it pull through. It was getting the awareness, but it wasn't pulled through. So we kind of turned marketing on its head, probably, October time, where suddenly me, so head of the UK, I got all the budget and all the decision making, because we had to ensure that everything that was done and spent was connected and laddering to the local customer, was relevant to the market, and was connected. So, and that underpins is performance, actually. So it's really hard, it was really hard for me to connect Rockstars to the business, to actually what we do. It creates eyeballs, it creates that time, people know our brand, that's brilliant, but then, again, back to my first, then what? And so the performances now, now we are laddering, every team is now connected together into really the impact of marketing and the pipeline, because we have to. I think we'll probably all experience, I don't know how many, I hate this phrase, I've been hearing it for probably years. Do more with less. Can't stand it. But, resources are not there.
We're owned by private equity, we get that.
But they're not. And they're not there. And so we have to. So with that, those days have gone. So we have to. So this is where it's not having the metrics of reach, brilliant on its own. Coverage, PR, brilliant on its own. Aided awareness, brilliant on its own. But then what? How do we bring all these things together? And that's my world. So that is my world, where it's like, how do I bring all these together? So I have to then have those difficult conversations of, love it, absolutely love it. How does that ladder to digital? How does that connect with social? How does that connect to our customer advocacy? How are we connecting over here to press? How are we all coming together? Because I can't have marketing in the green and having sales in the red. And I know I'm probably the only field marketeer in the room, I don't know. But we all have to care about the green and the red, unfortunately. And so what I have gone through many pains, that it is, difficult conversations, because it's a mindset change too. It's a real mindset change, and you know, trying to sort of ask the right questions, pull teams together, creating target teams here and there, get people to talk together is probably the first stage. You know, why is brands not talking to social? I know maybe some organisations they didn't in Workday. You know, should press, for PR, talk to social. Novel. But the one thing is performance metrics, to be honest. It is caring about what's next and having everybody ladder. It's not comfortable, to be honest, it's not. But it's so important because you will only be successful by working together, really. And you want to be on that train to be successful, so it is connected together.
Well, the point is, if you all have different objectives, if your brand team has one set of objectives, your social team has another set of objectives, your PR team has another set, your performance team, your influencer team, you're all pulling in a different direction, right?
Exactly, and that's the challenge. And we should have one narrative, and we all have to take that, because with the authority world, and you can't spread yourself and have different conversations. You need to be one team.
I think, that's precisely what I wanted to get out of today. I think comms people, and particularly the very best comms people, will know about outputs, outtakes, and outcomes. I speak about it all the time. It's really fucking boring. But there aren't enough marketers who talk about it, right? Because for a long time, I think particularly brand marketers, I think it's fair to say, weren't challenged on the ROI of brand because it was so hard to measure. That isn't the case anymore. So what do? You start by measuring outputs. What shit have we done, right? How many pieces of content have we put out? How much coverage have we had? Even down to vanity metrics like engagements on social posts, etc. To outtakes. What do people now think and feel about our brand as a result of what we have done? That could be sentiment, that could be message penetration, that could be it could be the types of reaction you're getting on posts, whatever it might be. To outcomes. How have we, as a function, and as a team within that function, moved the needle for our business based on our objectives? It's a pressure cooker, right? We're under more pressure than ever to prove our value. We all know the first team to get cut is the marketing and comms team. Starting with objectives in mind and aligning on those. Again, if there's something you go and do tomorrow, sit in the office and decide, if we had to have 3 objectives tomorrow as one team, not 5 different teams sitting in little corners of the office having our different lunches at lunchtime, if we have one team, how do we prove value together? Rant over. Listen, I want to bring it back to what Darren and Hannah were talking about earlier, with this idea that we've moved from search to discovery. It's far less linear, and Joe, I think you sort of leaned on that nicely. You have to be everywhere your consumers hang out, right? How do you get there, and how do you understand it?
I think I use the phrase omnipresent, because everybody likes an omni in marketing, don't they? So you have to be omnipresent, and it sounds a bit overwhelming, but be found everywhere search happens, basically. As a team, though, I mean, I recall when I was in-house at Gymshark, it is true that everybody sits on different tables, and sort of, it's like when you're back at high school and there's all different types of people in the canteen, and it's like, I sit on this desk and they sit on that desk, and it's like, you can't go and sit with them. It kind of was like that. But I think over time, what we realised is we have to at least be telling the same story. I think we talked about objectives, they can be different, but the story has to be the same. And over time, we had to explore what that story was. We didn't know it from the beginning. A lot of businesses, they're very rough and ready at the beginning. Like, they're just moving really fast, scaling up really fast. It's a hot mess inside the building. Nobody really knows what they're doing. And most people are not really qualified for the job that they actually end up doing. No shade thrown to anybody I've previously worked with. But you just kind of run and you learn on the job. But what we did realise is when we cinched the story, so I don't know if you know now, the brand at Gymshark is We Do Gym. So we explored a lot of different things until we landed on We Do Gym. There's a psychology to 3 as well, by the way, like just do it, we do gym, I'm loving it. So it's this idea that it's really easy to remember. The point in omnipresence is, if we can make it really easy to remember, not only does the internal team echo it every day they walk into the building, they know, how do I portray we do gym across PR, across social media content, across the brand campaigns, the creative campaigns, the accounts department, I don't know, like everything is we do gym. It's much easier to capture that than to try and think of all these semantics that mean different things to different departments. But not only that, the consumers can then start to echo, we do gym. And they start to think that when they hear it enough, they start to talk about it. They start to go to the gym, see the Gymshark logo and go, oh yeah, we do gym. Guess what? We just made their life really easy for them. We're not asking them to study a brand book. We're just saying, we do gym. Go talk to your mates about we do gym. So omnipresence doesn't have to be fundamentally terrifying to a marketing team. It just needs to be brutally simple so that the word travels on your behalf.
Here we are going, reminding you, your service is coming off, and everyone's like, oh God. So being that brand, that's a whole other barrier to overcome. So, you know, if you can do fun gym stuff, we would love to do the fun gym stuff, but we're not. We're the people that are reminding you you're going to pay 150 quid for your car in a few months. And what is really important in our space is that we make sure people are understanding why that's important. We're telling you know that you've got to pay for this. Everybody knows you've got to pay for it, but why? Why is that important? Why does my car need that? Why is the mechanic telling me I need something extra now? Because I wasn't expecting that. And all of that frustration builds up, and it spills into a lack of trust in our industry, against garages, and then that reflects back onto our brand. So we're tackling this sort of societal hatred of car repair, which we're like, fair enough, it is rubbish. But at the same time, we're still a brand and we still need to connect with these drivers that are understandably frustrated about a problem that we're all facing. So what we're doing in our slightly less sexy and more dry space of car repair is trying to, as much as possible, create our content around informing and educating drivers around stuff that know if they put their hand up, are they being honestly interested in this? Probably not. But do they need this information sometimes? Yes. Are you searching sometimes? Why is my car making that weird noise? Yeah, that will be where our content is popping up. We're using search and we're using AI algorithms now because we are also looking at GEO and how that's affecting the way people are searching for information about car repair and where we're popping up in that. So all of the conversation that we had with Daryl and Anna earlier, that's all super priority number 1 at Fix My Car right now, and understanding that and making sure that our brand is still there and still coming through as a source, a trusted source of information for drivers on a topic that we know you're searching for even if you don't want to.
And just going back to Joe, I think, I don't know how to say this in a non-creepy way. Underwear is
prepared for creepiness, sorry.
Sort of lounge underwear, arguably more sexy than some cars. When it comes to that discoverability piece, when it comes to being top of mind, right? There's loads of competition out there. You're not going to be running necessarily brand campaigns to all audiences at all times. Like, just talk to me about how that logic works.
Yeah, so you have to ladder it up. I mean, there's research in this brand being a performance amplifier thing. I went to Cannes last year and there were a lot of talks about it. So I'm surprised it hasn't caught up a bit more by now. There's a particular study called the Awareness Advantage by TikTok and Tracksuit. So they found that when a brand runs a brand campaign and performance content at the same time, it's a 2.8% more efficiency in the performance because the brand content is running as well. So essentially, your brand at the high level, let's just use Gymshark again as an example, we do gym, because we're here now. It's the overarching message. Beneath that, we were always running the paid targeted ads. It's just that when you connect those ads to that higher level message, the continuity is there. That's really important. If you've got one message on the brand awareness level that's saying something really different to what's happening down here, you've got a problem. You're not making it easy for the audience, the consumers, to connect the dots. They
their phone or they're browsing, they need you to do the work for them. So the best campaigns are the ones where your brand campaign is running, or you probably have the term brand platform. That's a long-term campaign with a singular message. Good examples at the moment, the M&S Gillian Anderson Chief Compliments Officer. That's part of the long-term brand campaign that M&S are doing. They're activating with Gillian Anderson, you know, familiar face, let's build trust and awareness and a story of what M&S is. But how many of you shop M&S? I do, it's really cool now. So I get targeted with all the paid ads too. You interact at the top level, you get served the next bit to buy at the bottom level, you're in the funnel. Everything's singing in harmony. But if you've got fragmented, you know, brand design from a campaign level, like it's not good for the consumer.
Sorry, I know I'm jumping in, you can ask me the questions, but this is, I completely agree, and I, you know, it's the same in B2B as well. This is what I was getting at earlier, is it's so important to connect it together. It is so important today, and it doesn't happen enough, to be honest. It's still a struggle. And I think we all need to take sort of accountability to try and think about how do we bring it all together, because it's, these days we have leaky buckets in marketing, you know. We have leaky authority, we have leaky, all this effort. We're running really hard at the moment. But if we just actually had that full-fledged campaigners in market for a year, we don't have to keep on changing, it will be more successful.
Well, that leads me very nicely to my last section, right, which is, we know, and I know that some of you will leave here tomorrow, next week, next month, next quarter, whatever, go and do some great stuff, right? You're going to learn a load of stuff, you're going to implement some great changes, and you may or may not move the needle. We know that there are so many marketers, comms practitioners, advertisers, whatever, who then don't go beyond things like surveys to measure success and satisfaction. They then don't even monitor results to see the change. It's bizarre to me, frankly. So my sort of, again, I've added a few, I've given everyone homework today. My request would be that you, of course, invest in the tools that will help you improve your value, but you do so in a way that is linked to your objectives and shows what's working, what's not working, so you can take action today, not at your budget review at the end of the fiscal year. I do need to wrap up, so I just want to quickly end on that topic of measuring impact. Vicky, then, you gave us an anecdote. I don't know if you're comfortable sharing this.
It's not being recorded, is it?
No, you're fine. Is it being recorded? It's being recorded, so just look down that lens and say how much you like that team. But you move budget, right? When something's not working, you have to protect your team, your brand, your budget. Tell me about that.
So I had to be brave. I could see some green in places and I could see some red in places. And knowing where marketing needs to go, I had to take on the big, strong group, or just brand. And so I took a portion of their budget away, which a significant amount of their budget away, to invest into organic and earned, because I had to. I really, really had to, because that is where marketing is. You know, I needed to be one. I needed not just to be global. I needed it to be local. I needed budget to be able to make it locally relevant and ensure all the local elements were pulling around that global brand. I don't want to break the brand. We should never break the brand, but we need to make it work harder locally, and I needed the budget to do that. So I took it away. And I also then invested into content, primary research, things I can talk about, things that will give me credibility, that I can build a whole year campaign on a piece of, you know, primary research that I can slice and dice in so many different ways. So it was challenged, it went to the CMO, but it maintained at the level that I took that away. So yeah, and I think we all have to be a bit brave and a bit curious.
Yeah, 100%. What I want to make sure though is that...
Did I not answer your question?
No, you did. I just want to make sure that we're not I feel like I've been sort of shitting on certain teams, which I want to make sure I don't do. Joe, brand, go on, son.
Sorry, in terms of brand, so what I can say there is, for the brand to work harder, the brand team will be successful. That's the thing. So if you're going to just sponsor Strava, which we're doing, great. But unless you get some campaigns around that, link it into 5 to 9 running club in London, you get some...
It's integrated.
Integrated, it will not land and the brand team won't be as successful. So it's really to get out of that comfort zone and think broader, really. So global to local.
And Joe, then talk to me about how brand, just very briefly, can be a performance driver. Give me some examples. How can brand be a performance driver?
Ooh, how can brand be a performance driver? I mean, I know many multi-billion-pound businesses that have only functioned on performance. I think ultimately it's just get the story straight. I'll keep banging the same drum. Get the story straight at the very top. The story will work for you because the consumers will work for you, and also, as we've discussed, the LLMs and all that AI stuff will work for you as well. Get the story straight. That's as simple as it needs to be.
Okay, and then Amy and Will, bring us home. We've spoken on live. I've scribbled so many notes around earned media now being important to us all, around understanding your audience and going to them, around the convergence of B2B, B2C, creator economy, earned and social, discoverability and AI. None of it matters if you can't measure it. So I don't know who wants to take this, but talk to me about, one, the metrics that matter, how you prove and improve your value, and two, how you ensure you're working hand in hand, both marketing and comms, brand, social, performance, to make that happen.
Yeah, I prepared the second half of that question. So look, I've got about, unsurprisingly, about £4.50 to spend on marketing, don't tell my bosses that. So actually the point around working hand in hand with various departments goes full circle back to what you were saying earlier about joint objectives. I work really, really closely with our social and digital team to make sure that we're all pulling in the right direction. The social output of TalkSport in particular, I've gone about it a little bit, has just grown massively and massively. They have a job to do. They want to get as much sort of cut through as possible, but they're kind of doing it from a video view only perspective and growing that. Like, we obviously need to push the brand. We need to do it, as I said earlier, with a purpose. So we work really, really closely with them to say, okay, how do we, utilise our talent, utilise our channels, utilise, X, Y, Z to make sure that we are kind of laddering right back up to what do we want TalkSport to be known for? What do we want Virgin Radio to be known for? We've got a challenge around TalkSport's thriving at the moment. Virgin Radio needs a bit of love, and actually we're leaning into that nostalgia piece. And how do we make sure that we're using those channels and sort of cross-collaborating across the business?
Amy?
At FixMyPar, the key metrics that we're looking at measuring sort of our success, and I am inserting PR and marketing into every aspect of every other part of the business wherever possible to try and claim some kind of link there. But it's a very intense competitive space, and so looking at what our competitors are doing is quite a big deal for us, and making sure that we are as much in the spaces that they're in, but also in the spaces that they aren't, which feels like a never-ending cycle. But share of voice is a really big one that we're always looking at. Share of search is also another one that we've looked at. We're still working out how we're going to fit in the LLMs in there. I'll let you know when we figure that one out. But share of voice against our competitors definitely, and share of search of how we're coming up in Google, because that is how people find us. That's how drivers find us. Those are really key metrics to us, and I don't see that changing for us anytime soon, unless AI really does something different.
It's AI at the back of the room as well. Wonderful. Well, I've been waved up for 10 minutes, and I've sort of told them to leave me alone. So, just to sum up, I've been scribbling throughout. I think the message is go and make friends with your counterparts. Whether if you're a marketer, go and speak to comms. If you're in comms, go and speak to marketing. Align your objectives with them. Have one set of objectives that you can measure against. Build cross-channel campaigns, cross-channel approaches. That will mean different tactics, different strategies for different objectives. That's fine. Just make sure you can measure against them. Set up the metrics to do that, and understand how you do that with a partner you can trust. So thanks very much, and thanks to the panel. Cheers.
Thank you.